Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people you know rarely explain themselves? They don't defend their choices. They don't beg to be understood. They simply appear a certain way, and the world adjusts around them. Meanwhile, you're exhausting yourself trying to show everyone who you really are, hoping they'll finally get you. And they never do. Because here's what nobody told you. The moment you need people to understand you, you've already lost. Now imagine if instead of seeking understanding, you controlled the image. That's where the real power lies. When you stop being available emotionally, when you withdraw from the need to be understood, something shifts in the world around you. People don't know what to do with you anymore. And that confusion, that's your advantage. Niccolò Machiavelli said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Think about that for a moment. The world doesn't respond to your truth. It responds to your presentation. And you've been doing it backwards this entire time. You think authenticity means showing everyone your wounds, your struggles, your raw, unfiltered self. You've been told that vulnerability is strength, that people will love you for your honesty. But let me ask you something. How's that working out? How many times have you opened up, shown your soul, and watched people use that information against you later? How many times have you been authentic, only to be misunderstood anyway? The truth is brutal. Most people cannot handle your depth. They cannot process your complexity. They cannot see you clearly because they're looking through their own projections, their own needs, their own fears. Carl Jung knew this. He said, "Thinking is difficult, therefore most people judge." They're not trying to understand you. They're trying to categorize you into something they can manage. So you explain, you overshare, you justify every choice, every boundary, every moment you say no. You're terrified of being misunderstood, so you become an open book. And what happens? People read you, judge you, and then close the book when they're done. You become readable, and what is readable is controllable. Do you know why? Because when you're desperate to be understood, you give others the pen to write your story. Every explanation is a negotiation. Every justification is a power transfer. Every time you try to correct someone's perception of you, you're essentially saying, "Your opinion of me matters more than my opinion of myself." And that's the prison, right there. Not in being misunderstood, but in needing to be understood, in believing that your worth depends on whether others can grasp your intentions, your motivations, your inner world. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. The people who matter will never fully understand you, and the people who claim they do are probably projecting. Understanding is an illusion we chase to feel less alone. But real power, real sovereignty, it comes when you stop chasing that illusion entirely. Machiavelli wasn't teaching cruelty when he spoke about appearance versus reality. He was teaching protection. He understood that in a world of constant judgment, constant projection, constant manipulation, your inner truth is sacred. And sacred things must be guarded, not explained, not displayed, not offered up for public consumption. You've been conditioned to believe that hiding parts of yourself is dishonest, that having a public face and a private truth makes you fake. But Jung would disagree. He spoke of the persona, the mask we wear in social situations. And he didn't see it as false. He saw it as necessary. The persona protects the authentic self from a world that isn't always safe for authenticity. The problem isn't that you have a mask. The problem is that you've forgotten you're wearing one. You've fused with it. You think the approval-seeking, explanation-giving, perpetually understood version of yourself is you. But it's not. It's a defensive adaptation to a world that punished you for being incomprehensible. And now it's draining you. Every explanation costs energy. Every attempt to be understood is psychic labor. Every moment spent managing others' perceptions of your intentions is a moment stolen from actually living your life. You're working so hard to be seen that you've stopped seeing yourself. Let me show you what's really happening beneath the surface. When you desperately try to make people understand you, you're not actually seeking understanding, you're seeking safety. You're trying to control their perception so they won't hurt you, reject you, abandon you. It's a trauma response dressed up as authenticity. And manipulative people smell this a mile away. They know exactly how to trigger your need to explain yourself. One well-placed misunderstanding, one deliberate misinterpretation, and you're off to the races, explaining, justifying, defending. And while you're doing that, they're in control. Your energy is scattered, your power is diluted, your attention is where they want it, on managing their impression of you. This is what Jung meant by projection. Others project their internal world onto you, and instead of letting those projections slide off, you internalize them. You take responsibility for their misperceptions. You think it's your job to correct their vision, but it's not. Their projections say everything about them and nothing about you. Machiavelli understood this dynamic intimately. In The Prince, he wrote about how perception shapes political reality. A leader who appears strong is strong, even if privately they're terrified. A leader who appears merciful is merciful, even if they've made ruthless decisions. The appearance becomes the reality in the minds of others, and in human psychology, perception is the only reality that matters. But here's what most people miss about Machiavelli's wisdom. He wasn't advocating for manipulation. He was advocating for strategy, for conscious choice about what you reveal and what you protect, for understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, that some truths are meant to be lived, not explained. Think about the people you respect most, the ones with real presence, real power. Do they constantly explain themselves? Do they anxiously clarify their intentions? Do they need you to understand their every move? Number. They simply are. They embody their choices so fully that explanation becomes unnecessary. Their actions speak. Their energy speaks, but they don't speak unnecessarily. And that silence, that containment, that refusal to be readable, it's magnetic. Because it suggests depth. It suggests that there are layers you haven't accessed, secrets you haven't been told, dimensions you haven't explored. And humans are drawn to mystery like moths to flame. But when you over-explain, you kill the mystery. When you're an open book, people read you quickly and move on. There's no intrigue, no depth to discover, no reason to stay curious. You've handed them the whole story in the first chapter, and they're already bored. Sigmund Freud talked about the pleasure principle versus the reality principle. We're wired to want what we can't fully have, what we can't fully know. The moment something becomes completely available, completely understood, the psychological tension dissolves, and with it, the interest. This is why your over-explanation is sabotaging your relationships, not because you're being too honest, but because you're removing the necessary space for others to wonder about you, to be curious, to project their own ideals onto the mystery of who you are. I know what you're thinking, but isn't that manipulative? Isn't that dishonest? Shouldn't I be authentic? And here's where we need to clarify something crucial. There's a difference between being inauthentic and being selective. Being inauthentic means betraying your own values to please others. Being selective means choosing which aspects of your authentic self to share, and with whom. You don't owe everyone your full transparency. You don't owe everyone your inner world. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your boundaries, your choices, your evolution. In fact, most people haven't earned that access. They haven't proven themselves trustworthy with your depth. And this is what Machiavelli was really teaching: discernment, the ability to read people, to understand their motivations, and to choose your presentation accordingly. Not to deceive, but to protect. Not to manipulate, but to maintain sovereignty over your own narrative. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole, of integrating all parts of yourself into conscious awareness. But part of that journey is understanding that wholeness doesn't mean exposure. You can be fully integrated and still choose what you reveal. In fact, that choice itself is a sign of integration. It means you know yourself well enough to know what's sacred and what's shareable. The shadow side of radical honesty and authentic vulnerability is that they can become another form of people-pleasing. Another way of saying, please accept me, please love me. Here's everything I am, so you can decide if I'm worthy. That's not strength. That's a wound seeking validation. Real authenticity is living in alignment with your values, whether anyone understands or not. Real vulnerability is being honest with yourself about what you're feeling and why. It doesn't require an audience. It doesn't need witnesses. It definitely doesn't need approval. So how do you break this pattern? How do you stop being controlled by the need to be understood? It starts with a fundamental shift in perspective, and I'll warn you, it's uncomfortable at first. First, you must accept that being misunderstood is not a problem to solve. It's a reality to embrace. No matter how articulate you are, no matter how clearly you explain yourself, people will still see you through their own lens. Their childhood wounds, their unconscious biases, their current emotional state, all of it colors how they perceive you. And that has nothing to do with you. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." Stop trying to make people feel your truth. Let them see what serves you both. This doesn't mean becoming fake. It means becoming strategic. It means understanding that you have different relationships with different people, and they each require different levels of access. Your mother doesn't need to know about your spiritual crisis. Your boss doesn't need to know about your relationship struggles. Your acquaintances don't need to know your trauma history. And randos on the internet? They definitely don't deserve your explanation for existing. Jung talked about the importance of boundaries in maintaining psychic health. Every time you over-explain yourself to someone who didn't earn that access, you're violating your own boundaries. You're taking something precious, your inner truth, and throwing it to people who aren't equipped to handle it with care. Start practicing what I call strategic opacity. This doesn't mean being secretive or dishonest. It means being selective. When someone asks a probing question, you don't owe them the full answer. "That's personal" is a complete sentence. "I'd rather not discuss that" is a full explanation. "That's not something I'm sharing right now" requires no justification. Watch what happens when you start doing this. Some people will get frustrated. They'll push harder. They'll accuse you of being closed off or difficult or changed. Good. That's the sound of manipulators losing access to your control panel. Those were the people who needed you readable so they could manage you. But others will respect you more. They'll sense that you have boundaries, that you have depth, that you're not performing for their approval. And those are your people, the ones who don't need you to be an open book because they're comfortable with mystery. The ones who trust you without needing constant explanation. Here's a practical exercise. Something Machiavelli would approve of. For the next week, every time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Take 3 breaths. Then ask yourself, is this explanation serving me, or am I just managing this person's perception of me? If it's the latter, say less. Way less. You'll notice how much energy you save, how much mental space you reclaim, how much lighter you feel when you're not constantly justifying your existence to people who weren't even really asking. And here's something fascinating that will happen. When you stop over-explaining, people will start projecting positive qualities onto you. They'll assume you're confident because you don't defend yourself. They'll assume you're powerful because you don't need their validation. They'll assume you have secrets worth keeping because you're not spilling everything. This is what Machiavelli meant by controlling perception. You're not lying. You're not deceiving. You're simply creating space for others to fill in the blanks. And most people fill those blanks with their own idealized projections. It's human nature. But, and this is crucial, this only works if you're genuinely solid in yourself. If you're using opacity to hide insecurity, people will sense it. If you're withholding because you're scared, that fear will leak through. The strategy only works when it comes from a place of genuine self-possession. This is where Jung's concept of individuation becomes essential. You must do the inner work first. You must know yourself so deeply that you don't need external validation. You must be so rooted in your own truth that others' misperceptions don't shake you. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camp, said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That space, Frankl described. That's where you build your sovereignty. That's where you choose which version of yourself to present. That's where you decide what stays protected and what gets shared. Some of you are thinking, but what about close relationships? Surely I should explain myself to my partner, my best friend? Yes and no. Even in intimate relationships, there's a difference between sharing and defending. You can share your feelings, your experiences, your inner world. But you don't have to defend them. You don't have to make your partner understand why you feel a certain way. You just feel it. In fact, healthy relationships have more space for mystery than you think. The couple who know everything about each other, who have no internal life that's private, who share every thought and feeling, they often lose attraction over time. Because there's no space for curiosity, no room for the other to remain slightly unknown. Esther Perel, the relationship therapist, talks about this. She says, desire needs distance, not physical distance necessarily, but psychological space, the space to wonder, to imagine, to project. When you're constantly explaining every nuance of your being to your partner, you collapse that space. So even with those closest to you, practice selective transparency. Share what deepens intimacy. Protect what's sacred to your sense of self. Don't mistake over-explanation for love. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is trusting them to not need your constant explanation. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Isn't this exhausting? Isn't it tiring to be strategic about presentation? And here's the beautiful paradox. It's only exhausting if you're performing. If you're being inauthentic to please others, yes, that's draining. But if you're simply being selective about what you reveal, it's actually liberating. Think about it. Right now, you're exhausted from trying to make everyone understand you, from explaining, justifying, defending, from managing everyone's perceptions, from emotional labor that has no return. That's the real exhaustion. But when you embrace strategic opacity, when you let people think what they want, when you stop trying to control their understanding of you, you reclaim all that energy. You use it for things that actually matter, for creating, for growing, for becoming who you're meant to be, not who everyone else needs you to be. Machiavelli wrote The Prince not as a guide to tyranny, but as a survival manual for a brutal political landscape. He was saying, the world is not safe. People are not always trustworthy. Protect yourself by controlling what they see. That wisdom applies to our psychological landscape just as much as it did to 16th century Florence. When you finally stop needing to be understood, something miraculous happens. You discover a power you didn't know you had. The power of self-containment, the power of mystery, the power of being comfortable with being misunderstood. People suddenly treat you differently. They're more careful with you, more curious about you, more respectful of your boundaries, because you've signaled, without saying a word, that you don't need their approval. that you're not available for emotional manipulation, that your inner world is your own and access is a privilege, not a right. And here's the wild part. You become more attractive. Not just romantically, but in every area of life. People want to be around you more. They want to understand you, to crack the code, to get past the wall. But the wall isn't there to keep them out. It's there to see who's willing to respect it. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming who you truly are requires protecting that self from constant external judgment. It requires creating space where you can grow without everyone's opinion about your growth. When you control your perception, you're not hiding. You're curating. You're being intentional about what you share and why. You're respecting yourself enough to know that not everyone deserves the full story, and that's not arrogance. That's wisdom. Machiavelli was right. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. And that's not a tragedy. That's a design, a feature, not a bug. Your real self, your full self, your deep self, that's for you. And maybe for the very few who've proven they can hold it with care. Everyone else? They can interact with your presentation, with the version of you that serves the context, with the mask that protects the treasure beneath, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's psychological intelligence. So I ask you now, are you ready to stop exhausting yourself trying to be understood? Are you ready to let people think what they want while you live your truth quietly, powerfully, unapologetically? Are you ready to become a mystery again, even to people who think they know you? Because when you do, you'll discover something profound. You don't need to be understood to be powerful. You don't need to be fully known to be loved. You don't need everyone's validation to know your own worth. You just need to be solid in yourself and let the world see whatever they're ready to see. Today, we learned from Niccolò Machiavelli that controlling perception is not about deception. It's about protection and power. And from Carl Jung, we learned that individuation requires boundaries, that your inner world is sacred, and that not everyone deserves access to your depths. If these insights sparked a moment of clarity for you, hit that like button and share this wisdom with others who might need to hear it. Subscribe to join our community, where we explore profound ideas that transform how we see ourselves and the world. Together, we're learning to reclaim our power, protect our peace, and live authentically on our own terms. Until we meet again, remember, those who truly matter don't need your explanation, and those who demand it don't deserve it. Carry that truth forward and let it guide you toward genuine freedom. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore another transformative truth. Until then, choose your mystery over their understanding. Choose your power over their approval. Choose yourself. I choose my power. Write that in the comments if you're ready. May you find our talks not only educational, but also inspirational and, hopefully, ultimately, transformational. See you next time.